Welcome to Spiritual Changemakers, the podcast that guides you through tough times with practical tools and inspiring stories. I'm Andreea Tamas, your host and the Sacred Transitions Coach. Join us as we hear from spiritual changemakers who have connected with their higher power and overcame adversity. Whether you are navigating a difficult transition or seeking to deepen your spiritual practice, our podcast provides guidance to help you find magic in the change. Come on this journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and transformation with us and unlock your potential to become your best self. Welcome, beautiful souls, to a new podcast episode on Spiritual Changemakers. I am so excited for today's guest. We have been talking for months now to do this podcast episode, and I just believe that there is only divine timing, and this was the best time for us to meet, to co-create, and to share with you some really transformative tools and ways. And Kevin is an expert in the economics of self. He's the founder of Economics of Self, and we are going to dive deeper what that means. It's a framework that it's integrating economic principles, personal values, relationships, spirituality, and environmental considerations into decisions making for greater joy. What this framework does, it's evolved from a contribution of scholars, and his role is actually to just offer practical tools to apply it for organizing and navigating life with ease and integrity. And when I read that on his website and when we connected, I really loved this word integrity, because it's definitely one of my highest values. So no wonder we have connected and we are doing this podcast episode today. And his journey actually includes roles as an artist, designer, executive, entrepreneur, athlete, and actually also a recovering addict. He has 15 years of experience in business strategy and consulting, and he blends insights from various fields into his coaching practice. So please help me welcome Kevin Farr. I am so excited to have you as a guest today. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Greetings, everybody. Greetings, Andrea. So grateful to be here. And from the first introduction through a mutual friend of ours who sent me a podcast that you did with him. And he said, "Tell me what you think of this, Kevin. And then if it feels right, I'll make an introduction." I was like, I gotta meet this woman. And then our very first conversation, just dropping right into, intimate communication about like where we're at in life and what's going on. It's one of those experiences where as I've gotten wiser, hopefully, with those types of connections really give me an understanding of who I can be present with, talk intimately about life, and just explore, because a lot of times when you meet people and you ask them how they're doing, you're just like, oh, yeah, I'm okay, you know. But we really went into, like, you were sharing stuff about your life and what was going on with your family and relationship. And I was telling you, like, where I'm at. And it was just so much ease in communication, that doing something like this is really exciting and inspiring, because for me, it feels really like the way we should be as humans, which is even when we meet strangers or what seem like strangers, we relate. We actually relate honestly where we're at. So I feel really grateful to come into this type of experience in a podcast with someone that, like, I've only talked to really like one time, but had a really awesome way of relating, and I'm really excited to see what unfolds from this communication.
Yes, and I'm very excited too, and I'm grateful for our common friend that connected us. And I always love when these things happen, and you can just tell now when you meet with someone, it can just create this instant connection, and it's just there are no walls, and you can just talk and be freely yourself. And that happens, I would say, when work on themselves quite deeply, meet, and they're able to just be themselves with no masks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
before we dive
Well said. Well said.
into today's topic, and we will see what unfolds, what is presented, and where the energy is taking us, I would also love to ask you, Kevin, what does spirituality means to you, and how do you apply it and use it in your day-to-day life?
Oh, I love this question because I don't know if when we talked last time if I shared this with you that one of my first degrees in school was religious studies, and I specialized in mysticism. And at the time, I was an atheist. And the reason that I went to study religion for my undergrad, and then I went into a graduate program for it, and I was prepping for a PhD in it, all as an atheist, is because I saw religion as the most dominant cultural force on the planet, shaping every aspect of our life. And that we as humans in this modern day have forgotten that the reason we have the systems we have is because of one of the largest religious institutions in the world, Catholicism. And the reason I share this with you, asked you about spirituality, is that it took me a really long time to understand the difference between the institution of religion, a spiritual practice, and a mystical experience. And spirituality is really commonly used to describe a type of philosophy for how people live their life, right?
Mhm.
And oftentimes I see a lot of disconnect between the language of spirituality versus the experience of spirituality, the practice of it. And so I think for me, really spirituality is more closely for me in my day-to-day life, I use the word like mysticism. It is an ineffable experience by which I connect with nature, the divine, something that I can't fully explain. And it alters my way of thinking, treating myself, treating other people. It alters my way of relating to life itself. And that is different than someone saying like, I'm a Buddhist or a Taoist. Like that's a practice, which that can be a way of of communicating or refining one's way of being. But for me, being like a more mystical is like, there are so many different ways that I might talk to God or relate
Mhm.
to nature. Like, do I understand Buddhism and Taoism? Sure. Do I align with those principles? Sure. Are there useful things in Christianity, in Abrahamic traditions, in Islam? Like all these different spiritual practices have a common thread of truth. But underneath that is a felt knowing that there is something intelligent beyond my words that I am communicating with that also is guiding my life that I can't explain, and pay respect to that. Like that to me is the mystical experience. I pay respect to it. And so I'll say to people like, yeah, I live a spiritual life, because it's really weird to say to people like, I live a mystical life. They're just like, what? Like, like
You would feel
it's more
harder to
unusual
be
for people to hear that.
understood. Well,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and especially when you want to, I think that when we want to, as humans, when we all want to engage in a conversation about spirituality, we're trying to put language to something that truly is ineffable. So I try to, in common speak with people, use language that I think is where we can connect and bond and share information and transmit. But if when you ask me a real direct question like what is spirituality to me, I will say like much more mysticism. Yeah.
mm, I love that. And you said is a knowing that's something higher that you cannot really explain with the mind. It's a there. And what I would also add that is a feeling, no, because it's the connection that you have through the
Yep.
feeling, not through the mind, but through the body feeling of connecting with something higher. Like first, I think it starts with connection with self, no, and that's why I love the subject of today, economics of self. It starts with connection of self. Then you are able to connect with everything around you and with something higher. What would you say there? Does it start with connection with self, or would you approach it that no, it's actually, because some people probably would say that no, it's first is the connection with something higher and then you can connect with self.
Oh, wow. This is this is like taking me back to like these very intricate conversations that I had, like really getting like I studied to get into a master's program and a PhD, you have to really refined language. And this question is like, so I want to first clarify the word knowing, how I'm using it, right? Because knowing in English, right, is often related to data that is an intellectual bit of information that we can identify. It's a unit of information that has a physical shape and form, a number. I know that this is a book, this is hard, right? The knowing that I'm referring to is what we call the mystical knowing, which is it is beyond, it's even beyond a feeling. Feelings change. I could be happy, I could be sad, I could be trusting, but a deep intrinsic knowing, not in the mind, but in some ineffable sense of like what people might call a soul or a spirit. That's the type of knowing that I'm referring to. So when you ask me, does this spiritual connection start with self or outside? It's really interesting because for me, as being an atheist for a good portion of my life, with a lot of drug and alcohol problems, coming from a really rough childhood, being heavily involved in the criminal world, when I had my spiritual awakening, I wasn't looking to connect with myself at all, and what happened was that I was working with doctor. I was really struggling in life, even though on the surface it would look like things were normal. Like I wasn't in the criminal world. I had a little bit of sort of sobriety, but I was still struggling with like occasional drug and alcohol use, like binge drug using. But I knew there was something really wrong going on in my life, and I knew there was something really wrong with like how I grew up. And so when I sat in my first psychedelic experience, I just wanted to be fixed. That's it. I just want to be fixed. Just fix me. And I didn't think of like, is there a God or what's the purpose of like anything like that. But what happened for me was what I came to really understand in recovery is what they call the spiritual awakening. Like that's what happened to me my first psychedelic experience, and I saw my own ignorance and anger and frustration at life being transmuted onto like the universal intelligence of what we might call God or spirit or the spirit, the great spirit. And I was shown that like, no, the universe is definitely intelligent, Kevin. It's alive and you're wrong. And I was like, I totally got this wrong. Like, and it was a knowing. It wasn't intellectual. It was beyond even feeling in my body. It was as if all these puzzle pieces that I didn't understand just clicked together, and it was like, this is how the universe works. It's alive, it's intelligent, it's conscious, and you are part of it. And you are a tiny little thing, but you are significant. You matter. And that was also like a knowing. And so what happened for me is like that experience, I don't know what the boundaries are between self and other really anymore when it comes to spirituality and mysticism. So it was almost like this intelligence and this organism of life showed me like the truth of what I am and what life is. And then it gave me a choice. And it gave me a choice. It said, you can ignore this or you can get your shit together. And you can wake up. Then it put the responsibility on me to go inwards and do the self work. So the way that I live my life in practice now is that I understand that I have a relationship with myself that enables me to cultivate a relationship with higher power. And I also understand that higher power is communicating to me all the time. Nature is my God, right? And that really is my God. It's like the universe, and it's communicating. It's communicating through you and I. It's communicating through the plants. It's communicating through the air. It's communicating by how the environments are organized. Who I meet in some random conversation that turns out to be some person's friend that, it's always talking. So for me, there's this ebb and flow between like what I do for self and how I look outside. And I noticed a direct correlation between the more time I spend loving Kevin and taking care of Kevin, the more experience I have in understanding the universe. And the more experience I have in understanding the universe, the more it helps me understand me. So over time, I just all of a sudden the boundary of like self and outside and inside in my spiritual practice or my mystical practice, like that boundary doesn't exist.
You
There's no
become
line,
you
between
be,
self.
yeah.
Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
no separation anymore. No, you get to a point where you truly understand that I am like God. I am the universe. The universe is me, and it becomes this
Yes.
beautiful flow and alignment to go through life. And I'm so curious because
Yes.
you shared how, okay, psychedelic experience helped you have this spiritual awakening, but you were really struggling and you were going through addiction. And I'm curious, like, what propelled you to even go and have the psychedelic experience to like help yourself? What was that breaking point for you where like I have to do something, I have to change something, and you have made that drastic decision, especially after you said you lived as an atheist for such a long time?
it's just gonna sound crazy. Is like it actually was. I went on a huge drug binge at 33, massive. I mean, I did $10,000 worth of like high end designer drugs in like in like 4 weeks. And just span that out by a day. It's like I'm consuming $300 worth of like premium drugs like a day for like 30 days straight. And at the end of that drug binge, I was sitting alone and I was just like, all right, Kevin, do you want to die? And this is the conversation in my head. Do you want to die, Kevin? And it was like, well, we already tried that so many times. Like, it doesn't work. And anyway, it doesn't fucking matter if I die or not. Like, what the fuck? It doesn't matter. And it's like, well, then what do you want? And it's like, I want to live. It's like, well, what's the problem? I don't know how to live. And then this is the question back. Do you want to learn? And I was like, yes. That moment, right? Saying, yes, I want to learn how to live radically changed my life. So what happened after that drug binge is I said, all right, there's something really wrong in my life. I need help. Right. So I moved out of the city that I'd been in for a while. I went to LA and I went looking for a doctor that specialized in childhood trauma. I knew my childhood was fucked up, but I couldn't really understand. It was just everything was fractured. And I knew that my relationships with partners were unstable. My friendship group was unstable. There were lots of drugs and alcohol around. Even though I had normalized and I was working a normal job, I was about 5 years out of being, of drug dealing, which I had been in for 20 years. But my jobs were all unstable, but I was making more money. My body was in better shape, but my fucking mental health was fucked. And so I just knew something was wrong. So I went looking for for a doctor that could help me. And I understood compounds because part of what I did as a drug dealer is like I made drugs. That was one of my skill sets. I knew how to make things. And so I knew that I went looking for iboga first. That was the first medicine, like plant that I went looking for, but I couldn't afford it then. So I found this doctor. She typically worked with children. And she found me. She said, literally, she goes, I don't usually work with adults, Kevin, but you got referred to me and you have a really interesting story. I will help you. She right, so she's helping me, and we're working with, this is before MDA and MDMA had all of the publicity around it. This is we're talking almost 10, 12 years ago. It's just not like it is now. So it's underground. So we're working with MDA and MDMA, and like things are starting to like kind of like come back online. And but I still was an atheist. And then one day she comes into a therapy session and she goes, Kevin, I'm going to do something that is really risky, and I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. And I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck you're going to tell me. Like, what is that? What does that mean? And I was like, and sure, I mean, you totally have my trust. And she goes, I'm going to send you to another psychologist. He's going to work with you with ayahuasca. I think it's going to be really helpful for you. And I was like, cool. But I'm like, what else do I have to lose? So, okay, sure, I'm going. And it was just, it's like, I wouldn't have been able to say this at the time in this way, but I was so broken, so scared, so desperate to like learn how to live life that I'm gonna cry. It was like something inside of me was like, just go this way, Kevin. Like, don't ask questions. You just do whatever these people tell you to do. Just go. And I remember when I met this doctor, I had to fill out all this paperwork, and these questions are like, have you tried to commit suicide? It's like, yes. It's like, how many times? It's like, more than I can count. Have you ever been to jail? Yes. Have you ever been in a mental institution? Yes. Do you have drug addiction? Yes. Like, do you have a history of violence? Like, yeah, I've been in violent situations, right? And so I go into this ceremony just like, I'm just a fucking train wreck of a person. And all I said to this plant was like, whatever I need to see about my life, like, show me the truth. Just show me the truth of my life. And it took me through like literally it was like a book of my life, and it just like turned pages. And so it was like I was asking for help at such a deep level and just so ready to receive. And I was just so desperate that it humbled me, and I wouldn't even understood that that's what it was doing. It humbled me to say, like, I don't know what I'm doing. My life is unmanageable. Like, I need help. But I didn't know that then, but that's what was happening with me. And it was like being guided, higher power, like nature took care of me. Like, something carried me through that and brought me there. beyond my understanding, and it saved my life. I wish I could say that, like, I used to have a different story that, like, I made these decisions, did this, like,
When you got to
and
understand deeply that you were guided
yeah,
all
yeah,
along.
yeah,
Hmm.
yes, and it was only years later that I realized that, because when I finally went back into 12 step, a sponsor of mine said to me, how many times, Kevin, did you try to kick drugs? And I was like, I don't know, man, more times than I can count. And he's like, but why do you suddenly think that all of a sudden, like, this new path, like, opened up for you? I was like, well, I made a decision. And he goes, yeah, but I thought you made decisions to quit drug dealing and quit drug use and change your life. Like, I thought you said you made those decisions before. I was like, I did. He's like, but what happened before? I was like, I don't know. And then he kept asking me, like, in a loop, like, yeah, but if you made decisions and you made this happen, why couldn't you make it happen before? And then I got really pissed off at him, and I was like, what the fuck, man? You're like annoying the shit out of me. Like, what are you trying to do? He's like, welcome to higher power, Kevin. You're not the one in control. And I was like, shit. I think I'm making choices, but something else is guiding me, because I tried to make those same choices before and it didn't land in the same place. So something else was guiding me beyond, like, my will and, like, my understanding of things, and it took me to places that I wouldn't have even been able to imagine for myself.
Wow, wow. Like that in itself, I think it's so huge. Like to get to the point of understanding that you are not even in control of your choices. Like, let's go deeper there. Like, what? How? Like, okay, you just go on the street and tell people, okay, it's bullshitting. You're never in control. Like that. That I like. I know. Okay, you're never in control.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
actually, you are not even making your own choices because that's so freaking true. Like, I've experienced that with myself as well. Like, trying to go over and over and over on the same path. And no matter how much I wanted it, and my mind would be like, no, go that direction, I just couldn't move forward. So let's dive deeper here because I feel like this is a breaking point that can really help people to understand. I also feel like it can help people release the guilt of not
yes,
following through
yes.
with certain things because I know I've dealt a lot with that. I'm like, why the heck am I keep saying no? I'm going full in and I'm doing it and I have the desire and the willingness, but then something it's stopping. So tell me more about this, like that we have power into the choices we make.
Yeah, I love that you picked up on this, because this topic can be really scary for all of us in life. Like, what is agency? What is consciousness? Like, what is choice, right? And so the reason that I got attracted to mysticism in my studies is like I was saying, like, it shapes culture. It's giving people a framework for how to understand, and it can also be a framework to manipulate human behavior. Hence, large institutions can create governments and wars and politics, right? And they can strip humans of choice. They can
Hmm.
manipulate perception of self and other, and then cause people to behave against a moral guideline that often can be oppressive, suppressive, and violent. So I started going, like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, what is choice? And even before, I didn't even like meditation, but I'm studying meditation as, like as if I would study, like, a single-celled organism. I'm like, what is this world and what happens in here? And what I start noticing when I'm studying meditation early on is that I can't identify anything's happening in my mind. Right. And I'm cultured to think, like, I make a choice. So what I started exploring is going, how do I make a choice? How do I do that? What's the process by which I can say I made this choice, and I couldn't find the button, the lever, the steering wheel I couldn't find it. So I started getting into this research and this exploration with other people that did have deep mystical spiritual practices, that did have deep meditative practices. And they started showing me, like, more things to research and more things to read. And what I kept finding was this same pattern. No one can identify how anything is really happening. And then I'm like, no, no, okay, then I'll find it in science. This is where I'll find it in physics. I'll find the answer in physics, right? So then I go into, like, physics, and I'm like, and the same thing in physics, they can only approximate what's happening, and they describe something by the contrary action. They understand emptiness by something being full. They understand mass by something by the energy that something exerts on something else, right? Everything is correlated, but no one can have a clear description of the base code of anything. This is what physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, everybody's looking for the universal theory of everything, and nobody can describe it. So I just keep going through all these scientific domains, and I go down math and chemistry and biology and physics, and then I'm bringing it back to my religious studies people, and I'm getting into like system, and just on and on and on. And finally I'm just like, none of this fucking shit makes sense. I'm like human. So then I'm just like, humans just make shit up. That's the next place I go, is like, we're all just making shit up, right? And so it took me years to start to understand that nature is doing is so far beyond my conscious awareness, that my conscious awareness is actually just interpreting what's already happening, and that there's a latency, right? And for a long time, I would talk about this with other people in these areas that I study, and they didn't have good enough instruments in cognitive and psychology and neurology to test what I'm about to share with you. So they now have instruments where they have figured out that conscious awareness over action has a slight latency to it. The body takes action first. The conscious mind, makes sense of it. And so then that gave me a clue. Like once that research came out, I was like, shit, I'm right. Like, I don't have agency, and the free will is bullshit. Free will is fucking, all this hype about free will is bullshit. And I felt liberated. I was like, and then the next thing came was like, well, why is my body doing that? Like, okay, where's that coming from? And if you think about drug addiction, is like, I had, severe, at the peak of my drug addiction, like severe addiction, cross addicted to like multiple different substances, and some of the worst things: fentanyl, Dilaudid, Oxycontin, you name it. I was a garbage pail, but I particularly really loved like compounding, like all various kinds of narcotics. And at the peak of it, I'm shooting up. So I had become physically dependent on a substance beyond my conscious intent. And I'm destroying my body. I'm overdosing. I'm in the fucking hospital. My organs are failing, and I just can't stop. So I started to understand, like, okay, the body, there's something going on in the body that's far beyond my conscious mind. Then I started going, well, why would my body get into that situation? Like, what was happening in my body?
Yeah.
And then I started going, like, right, understanding, shit, I have a whole conditioned inner world based upon how I was raised that's guiding how I'm thinking and feeling. Like the chaos and the dysfunction in my home has taught me a lot about how to destroy myself. So then I was like, okay, well, let me follow that back. And then it was like, at a certain point, it's like, well, okay, that's what I learned when I was born, but then my cells were forming in my mother's womb. So there's a genetic and an epigenetic thing going on here. And so what's happening there? So then what I started to like look at is that genetics are a collection of experience of epigenetic expression over and over again, and that codes up genetics. And so there's a relationship between epigenetic expression and genetics, right? And it's like, what's the base code of how we are versus how do we express ourselves, right? And that's the difference between like a genetic code versus how it gets expressed, right? There can be coding, but it can get expressed in a nuanced way, and it can even mutate. So I start going deep into like this domain and studying this, and then I'm like, all right, well, genetics and epigenetic expression is a collection of behaviors over and over and over again from one generation to the next.
Yeah.
And then I started going like, light bulb, holy shit, in the Tibetan, in the oral tradition, which they call the secret oral tradition, which is only a secret because it's really difficult to understand. It's not a secret because they hide it. It's like anybody can access it. It's just really complicated to explain. But I'll just like summarize this. They have an explanation that the purpose of meditation or a spiritual practice is to wake up to the fact that we inherit a consciousness from the previous generation. That consciousness sits inside of our body, and it changes how we behave. And if we can disrupt that, we can actually have freedom to make a unique choice. So I'm like, oh shit, okay. So there is some level of choice that we have, and there's something else going on that we are inheriting from each generation. And I started looking at that from the perspective of dysfunction and addiction, going like, oh, I come from a family with dysfunction and addiction. I inherited that. That's a living organism. That's a consciousness. Addiction is a consciousness. So if that consciousness gets born into me and it's mixing with my unique consciousness, it's adjusting how I'm behaving, and I don't have free will anymore. I don't have autonomy, right? And there's no way out of that. Like, there's no way out of that conditioning for anybody. Like, everybody gets it some way or another. So then I started going like, okay, I'm a victim. Now I went into that mindset. Like,
Okay.
I'm a victim of all this shit that has happened. Right. So
Yeah,
now
I
I
see
have
it.
now I've stripped myself again. I have no choice whatsoever. I'm just a victim. So then I had to figure out that part of like, shit, how do I not be a victim? Okay. So over time, what I eventually landed in was this knowing that I have choice, but I don't know how. And I'm guided by something, but I don't fully understand what it's doing, but it has signals. And if I commit myself to surrender to the fact that I don't know what I'm doing, that I need help, I then I have an opportunity to relate to all this stuff we're talking about, relate to my body, relate to other people, relate to nature. And if I relate to it and bring gratitude and appreciation to it by practice, then I'm contributing to that relationship and I actually have influence. But I don't get to predict or force or will the outcome. And so what that looks like is that I live on two levels. I know I have choice, but I don't know how. And I know that I have no fucking idea what's going on. Right. And I had to work on that like a lot because it brings up like surrender. And so what this looks like in daily practice is like, I can make a choice to show up here and speak with you, but I have no idea where this conversation is going. I could try to will myself and try to direct the conversation
Yeah.
and force in all kinds of talking points and prepare ahead of time and study all the things that I need to say in just the right way so I can make the right point. And I've done shit like that. I'm not making fun of anybody. Trust me, I've done all that crazy willing and planning and forcing. And it's just exhausting, and
Yeah.
it never ends up the way that I think, because I always have some perspective of some perfect outcome that I have to force to be a way, and then I got to do all these things to get it that way. And what I realize is like, no, I can just say yes. I can step into this process and go, no matter what happens, it's going to be great and beautiful, and it's going to be awesome no matter what, and just show up as Kevin, take care of my mind, body, and spirit, and just see where it goes. And I'm not responsible for the outcome. So this is what helped me understand that I don't really have very many choices, but I have to just show up. Like, that's what
Yeah.
my choice is. Basically, can I show up in life, you know? And if I make that choice, then just things happen on my, and the next choice I have is, do I celebrate it or do I judge it? And so I start to realize like, I have choices, but they're not as many as I think.
Mm.
Say yes to life, take care of my body, pay attention to the environment, love myself, and love other people. And if you said, how do you do that, Kevin? I would go, I could tell you stories, but I'm not really sure that's happening on my behalf too.
Then you go back to, I have no idea what I'm doing.
I have no idea. I have no idea
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
You
I
go to
need, right?
the,
It's like you see the cycle. Like, I
yes,
need help.
I love it. Oh my gosh, there are so like many like wisdom bombs there that you dropped. I'm in awe, and I love this conversation and what you're sharing. And I want us to just take us a little bit to the I have no idea of what I am doing because I feel like this is a syndrome that we all live
Yes.
with, but then at the same time, we go out in the world through life trying to pretend and to look like we know what we are doing. And I think we all experience that. And I know I feel it so much through my day to day life, in my business, with my podcast, with everything I'm doing. I'm like, I have no freaking clue what I'm doing. I'm just, as you said, I'm just saying yes, and I just let it unfold. And that comes with a lot of trust and surrender. And that has been like my mantra since
Yeah.
since I started traveling. I'm like, I just trust and surrender instead of trying to control everything, because the trying to control is just an illusion, because what we think we have control over, it's actually so little, as we have been talking.
Yeah.
Like our control, based on also what you shared, it can be as like it's in my control to say yes. It's in my control on like focusing on what I pay attention, taking care of my body, loving myself, loving others. That's in our control. But from there, everything else, it takes us back to this, that I have no idea what I'm doing, and how people can really take this deeper and integrate it in their life without making it feel, because I feel like it feels like a disease, like, oh my gosh, like I feel so bad because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. It can be terrifying, absolutely
Mhm.
terrifying. And I appreciate the vulnerability of you sharing like how much you deal with that, because I deal with that too, where there and when I went into business, I mean, I got paid really well to tell people that I know what I'm doing all the time. And I'm I got Fortune 10 clients, I'm in big innovation work, I got nonprofits, I got the federal government, I mean, fuck, my clients were like the United States ag industry. Like I'm doing all this like big stuff that I really care about, and I'm supposed to know, and then I think I'm supposed to know, and then I'm pressuring myself to know. I gotta have all the answers. And then when I was involved in like the criminal world, like same thing. Like I had to have all the answers for safety. I needed to know what I'm doing, where I'm dropping things, I'd like a lot of risk in that world. So I was so well conditioned to control, because I also equate knowing what I'm doing with control. And that,
Yes.
like, I had drug problems, but the crazier addictions are fucking in here. Control, like will, like I was addicted to like trying to control reality through my mind and then my actions. And that's like, it's exhausting, it's impossible. And it really reinforced that if I couldn't control stuff, I'm doing something wrong as a person. So my sense of self-worth and value got super wrapped up in control. And getting out of that, this is like the beauty and magic of plant medicines. And this is why, like, I sometimes use the word psychedelic because people can understand that better than plant medicine, but I prefer
Mhm.
medicine or nature. Nature with plants, it took me to a space where I couldn't use that control. And I tried. I would fight, I'd cry, I'd scream, I'd get angry, and I get scared because I couldn't control. It's showing me things that like I can't control, and it's humbling me. And once I got to that point of like surrender and acceptance that I am not the one in control, and to humble myself before nature. I am a child of nature. I am part of God. God lives inside of me, but there is so much mystery far beyond what I can control. There is infinite different energies. And I don't mean this in the woo woo way people talk about energy. I'll just make it simple. Science. They're electrical energy that makes up the universe. My body is a battery. There is electrical energy in my body. There's so much shit happening in my body. It's not like I say to my heart, you pump now and you make that electricity and you pump that blood, and stomach, you digest that food. It's like all this shit is happening on my behalf. So much arrogance in my life and hubris to think like I am the one in control and I will these outcomes. And if I don't, I fucked up and I should get it better next time. And if I just study harder and practice more and meet the right people and do the right thing, then I'll get the outcome that I want. It's like, that's crazy. It's like insane that we inherit that, and it's like it's a prison.
It is.
And the crazy thing about, right, it's a total prison. And it's a prison because we can never get the outcome that we want, because that would be impossible. And if we did, think of what life would be like if everybody just walked around making everything exactly the way that they wanted. It would be static. It would be the most boring existence ever. It would just be like, it's like, yeah, like what? It's like having a great lover and then being like, you be obedient, you get that food, you give me those hugs, you give me those kisses. It's like the best thing about a good lover is like the surprise kiss on the cheek of I missed you, how's your morning? Like, it's like you can't plan that. It's like total, like, like getting out of the control. Like the reason I go to recovery still, and I still have therapy, and I still sit in these practices is because I constantly tend to the tendency to control. It's
Mhm.
still, and I know that my life is better in its quality of relationships, its connection to higher power. My overall experience of life is so much enhanced and so much richer by me not falling into control. And it doesn't mean that I don't experience conditions that are scary, uncomfortable, fearful. I don't have my issues, like I do. It's just I'm okay with the fact that I don't have to control that,
Mm.
and if I try to, I'm okay with the fact that that's okay, that sometimes like I may get really scared and I want to control an outcome, or I'm upset that somebody didn't behave the way that like I wanted and that they didn't say sorry for something, and I'm just like, I need to negotiate with you so you treat me the way that I want to be treated. And it's really liberating to go like, you know what, people have the right to do whatever the fuck they want to do. People have the right to be mad at me. People have the right to not say sorry. Shit, I'm not in control. And that's
Yeah.
not for me to say what other people do. Keep the attention on myself,
Mm.
respect the fact that I don't know what's going on. And this was like a really hard one for me around control. And I work on this regularly, to trust that nature is not trying to harm me, that it actually has my best interest in mind, to trust life, to
Mm.
trust in the self-ordering and the self-organizing of life, and that ultimately life is beautiful. It's not hostile, though it has hostile things in it. And that takes a lot of faith and trust for me, because I did come from a really violent background. To really feel safe in life meant that I had to really trust a world that is unpredictable and does have dangerous things in it. But ultimately, it's, and if I really lean into that, nature always produces better outcomes than my controlling, neurotic mind can try to manage and make happen. Always, it surprises me in ways that I'm just like, it's so much better than my ideas.
Yeah,
Like, it's
because
so
the
much
mind is
better.
limited. Now, like what the mind can even
Yeah.
imagine and produce, it's so limited compared with when you trust, and when you trust in nature, when you trust in a higher power, it's like the outcomes that you can have are like, wow, mind blown. And how you said that,
Right.
like with the control, to realize, okay, the nature, and you call the nature also like the plant medicine, and probably you refer to such because you said nature is my god. So nature, it's also like the source that you connect with the most, and that's how you have your connection. When you go through life and you trust that, okay, we go from this is happening to me, like where we are in the victim no mentality, we go from this is happening to me to this is happening for me, and the third stage is this is happening through me. Like
Yes.
whatever it is, it's like I am just a vessel here through which God, divine, universe, it's moving through me. And I would say that's like one of the ultimate states to get to, that like it's like this full connection where I'm like, you get to a place where I'm just like a vessel through which the source, God, divine nature, however you want to call it, is just moving through me. And by me trusting and surrendering, it's allowing that energy to move.
Well, I was just laughing in my head because there was a period in my life when I would hear people talk the way you're talking, and I would just be like, "Fuck these woo woo people! I don't know what the fuck are they talking?" I would just be so angry and like so just like, and so for me to
From where
grasp
was this anger
like what you're
coming from?
from my frustration, that I distrusted what they were saying. I
Mm-hmm.
distrusted nature, and I felt like at that time period that I was still like a victim of nature, that I was being punished, and that life was hostile, and that I couldn't trust. And then I felt like there was like that they were discounting things in life, right? And so I'm just like, I'm distrust, and I don't understand, and I don't also fully understand how to embody my body yet. And part of the result of like a dysfunctional alcoholic addicted home with a lot of violence, living a street life, like getting into drug dealing, is like I everything I experience is through my mind, through my will, through my strategy, through my survival skills. So being in my body can actually be a really dangerous, scary place. When you're being abused as a kid, it's really scary to be in your body. When you're in a criminal world and people will kill you, being in your body, you can't register anxiety and be successful in that world. You have to stuff it down and like go on with your life. So coming into conscious contact with my body as a conduit for nature was really confusing when I heard people talk that way. And as much as I can understand like esoteric, mystical language, I'm still really nerdy with like science. So the first thing I did when I would hear these people talk is I would be like, all right, let me try to understand this through. I went back to physics, right? Physics is like what helped me so much. I was like, okay, I'm an open energy system. Laws of thermodynamics. There are photons moving around in the universe that pass through me. I'm a fucking I'm electrical conduit. That was like the first like opening to this understanding for me. It was like, oh yeah, the universe is a gigantic electrical system by which there's conduction of energy. When energy gets condensed down, there's mass. I am mass. I am energy condensed down, and energy still moves through me. I generate a heat radius off my body. I can measure that heat radius. When I'm in contact with another human being, they can register my heat and I can register their heat. Then the next level underneath that was nervous systems can register other nervous systems. We can co-regulate our nervous system. There is a chemical and electrical interaction when I relate to other people. If I relate to a dangerous person, my nervous system will say threat. If I relate to a loving, present person who's emotionally available, my nervous system will relax. So I started to see like the mechanics of I am a vessel is like, yeah, I'm totally a vessel. Things are moving through me and things are generating from within me and moving outwards. And once I started to be okay feeling that in my body, which was really, really scary to really get in here and go like, oh, the type of choices I have are actually to be in my body. That's a choice. I can choose to learn how to be in my body. And if I make that choice, then I can choose to be with my feelings, but I can't control them. I can just choose to sit. This is what I really understood is the practice of sitting. Sitting in a plant medicine practice, sitting in meditation is to sit with my feelings. And then I could feel feelings come through and then they dissipate. They rise, they fall, and I started to understand I don't know where feelings come from and I don't know where they go, but they sure as hell are fucking moving inside of me and they come and go. And I can share them with other people, right? And I can even transmit feelings to other people. I can share joy and then that will affect somebody else. I can
Contagious,
share
no?
anger and that will affect somebody else. So
Yeah.
it's right, exactly. It is. And this is like, so then I started going like, oh man, all these fucking people that I thought were just like these new age woo woo motherfuckers just saying all kinds of just like esoteric glistening shit under some like new age language. Like they're talking about the same thing that the ancients and our ancestors have been talking about for hundreds of thousands of years. And it's the same thing that physics talks about, and it's the same thing that psychologists talk about, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. Okay, Kevin, there's a common thread of truth here. Now you know. You know it beyond words, you know it beyond your mind, you know it beyond feeling. You know it as a universal law of truth for how things work in the universe. This is how life works. Life is pulsating energy. You are inside of a massive network. You are but a tiny cell in the God body of life. You're
And
a vessel. And that was
I
like,
love,
shit.
yeah, I love that you brought the scientific part, which I am not familiar with. And I'm glad you brought that because it's definitely going to help those more logical people. Like, I didn't need it in order to be in this path and to believe it, feel it, and live it. But a lot of people do need this part that you just shared in order like come to the conclusion that let me look deeper into it now, or now I understand it, now I can take it on as well. So I believe that people like you are so needed because there are a lot of people out there that need this scientific background in order to associate with what I'm saying, that it sounds so woo and so out there that for the logical people that are just in their mind they cannot comprehend.
Yeah, and that what that just reminded me of is all of the, it was really a really solid group of women that helped me understand what we're talking about. And it was women that would like the way that women would express this to me, particularly I had two female therapists and one psychologist, another one, and then there were women in the medicine community. And so they started to talk to me about stuff like this, but I felt my body would change when they would interact with me. And I remember one woman in a medicine ceremony, she said I was really struggling and I was crying and grieving a lot. And she came up to me at the end of the ceremony and she was older than me. And she said, "Kevin, you look like a little boy who never got hugged from your mother. Can I hold you?" And she put me in between her legs, and I'm much bigger than her. And she just bear hugged me and held me, right? And I just started bawling and my whole body relaxed. And I was like, "Oh my God." And then I would went to the doctors and I was like, "What the fuck is happening with me?" They're like, "Safety, Kevin. That's a regulated nervous system. Your body knows what's going on." And so it was really the nurturing feminine energy that talks in more of these softer esoteric terms that helped my rational science mind. It gave me the evidence. I needed evidence. I needed a felt experience. It gave me evidence, and then I could comport it to my rational, reductive, deductive, mindset, and then go okay, all this makes it safe. It makes sense. I get it. But it was really the tenderness and the nurturing of the feminine that really helped me soften into trusting that my body is a vessel. There are things that I'm sharing and relating with other people, and I'm ultimately like a conduit, and just surrender and relax. Just relax. Relax. And things will happen on your behalf, Kevin, but you have to relax, or things can't come in. They can't come in and they can't come through, because if I'm really distrusting and I'm really, really scared and I'm stuck in my mind and I'm scanning everything and I'm distancing myself, I can't connect with people, so I can't receive. Thus, I can't have a change in my body because I won't allow myself to receive. And so, learning to be a vessel is I had to open up and recognize I have to receive, I have to share as well. And now I'm back, and then once that's moving, then now I'm pulsating with the universe. I am ebbing and flowing, open. And I have choices. What do I let in? What do I give out? And now I am part of versus separate from.
So well put. So well put. Oh my gosh. This conversation has been so nourishing for my heart, for my mind, for my being. I absolutely loved it. And
Likewise.
I cannot believe we are almost an hour here that we have been talking. So
Yeah,
before
it's good.
we
Good combo. Good combo.
yeah, before we wrap up, Kevin, I would love to for you to share with the audience what is it that you do, how you support people these days, and how they can reach out to you, because you are doing some amazing, amazing work out there, and I want to make sure as many people out there hear about you and connect with you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I really want to celebrate too. I've been looking so forward to this conversation, because when we got introduced and we had the combo, this is how we talked. And it was interesting because when Peihan was introducing us, and he's a good friend of mine, and I said to him, I go, "Man, I really want to start talking again about business in a different way, know what that looks like, because all I know is the really transactional, highly competitive, dysfunctional world of high powered consulting that I came from in innovation work." And he goes, "Kevin, I think you're going to be quite surprised by the type of people you meet now, because you're different." And I didn't know that. And you were one of the first three people that I when I put out the prayer, I would like to start talking about this again. And I'm scared. I don't know what it looks like, because I only know what it was like when I was really just working in that world, and I kind of hid a lot of this stuff because I didn't feel safe. So I was really excited when we connected. And so this conversation for me is like a continuation of how meaningful and powerful these conversations are when we really speak honestly about who we are, what we're doing, how we got the way that we are. And that's what I do for work now. And that's taken me a long time to trust that I can show up in life based on all the experiences I have, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever people want to characterize it at, and that it has value. That I, as an organism, have been endowed with unique gifts just like everybody else. Right? And part of being like a vessel, as is often said, is that I carry things in this vessel, and I can also receive things. And there are things that my cup is abundantly full of because I'm naturally that. And then I can share that with other people, and I can receive from other people. And so what I do for work is I really help people deal with complex problems in their life, really complex problems. And because I've lived such a really fringe life, where it's like I was a high performing athlete, I'm still a high performing athlete. I've had tons of surgeries. I've had all kinds of body trauma. I've had all kinds of disease in my body. I've had mental health issues. I've been a drug addict. I've been a drug dealer. I've been in institutions. I've been in jail. I've been in prison. I've had people die around me, die of drugs. I've had people murdered around me because of the world that I was in. I've seen all kinds of shit. I come from a dysfunctional home. I grew up in a dysfunctional culture, a violent home, violent culture, violent country, and then I went into business, kicking and screaming, trying to just make a living. After I got out of prison, I kept overdosing, and finally I just cold turkey, like kicked drugs and started trying to get my shit together, and struggled, and got into business and learned all this stuff in business, got an MBA, master's degree in human behavior and design. I've got degrees in religious studies and social work. I've almost twice went into a PhD program. So I have all these like weird, would seem like weird experiences. And so what I do for work is all of these experiences have been rolled up into the economics of Kevin. And so I have a for-profit, which is where I work with people on life innovation. People are coming to me based on the experiences they're having in their life. So sometimes I'm working with business executives, sometimes I'm working with people dealing with health issues, sometimes I'm working with people dealing with addiction, and they're coming to me because they're at a crisis point, and they're looking for a model or a way to get out of the problem that they're in. So I help people identify what's going on and develop tools to get out of that problem so they can sustainably live and recover from whatever is ailing them. So that's on my coaching and consulting side. And so my clients really range in life experience, but I work with people that have experience like I have so that I can relate to them. I only do that. I don't go into domains that I don't have experience in. And then I have a not-for-profit, which is the work that we do with Iboga and recovery for people dealing with serious mental, physical, and spiritual health issues. And so my world is split between coaching and consulting. And sometimes it's easier to tell people like I do health and wellness coaching and consulting because it gets too complex. But I'm like, we're dealing with like really interesting problems, and we're looking at systemic solutions: diet, movement, spirituality, community, recovery. And then on the not-for-profit side, that's the same thing. We're helping people really develop tools. They're coming in crisis, sometimes with severe addiction, work addiction, sex addiction, love addiction, substance addiction. Sometimes they're coming in with serious health issues. They have diagnoses of cancer. They've got stuff going on in their organs. They've been on prescription pills. Sometimes we're helping people with strategies for detoxing off of like heavy psychoactives that they've been on. Sometimes they're coming off of pharmaceutical cocktails for different health issues, and we're helping them reconnect with their body, with their mind, with nature, and to start to create change in their life. And then we equip them with tools and resources to start making changes. So a lot of my work also, I sometimes characterize it as like, I'm like the crisis intervention person. It's like, and I'm so cool. Like, and I don't mean this as like I'm so cool. I mean, like, my body is really cool around crazy shit. I've lived a life of
Yeah.
fucking insane shit. So when people are coming in with all this stuff that people may not understand, or they may judge them for it, and someone's like, like I tried to commit suicide. I'm like, oh, don't worry. I tried that more times than I can count. You're in good company. We can talk. We can relate. So I
Yes.
really look at my work as like, I'm like, I'm like the crisis intervention person. And then my job is to really guide people into their version of hell, and then help them get home. I can't go in their hell with them. I can take them to the door. I can give them some really good tools while they're in there. I can wait for them on the other side when they come back and help people get home, and then say, welcome back. Here's some additional things that can help you as you go on living your life. And it's really beautiful work. And I never ever thought that the diversity in my life experience would turn into a way of living where everything that I do now in my life, and it's taken a long time to get here, is in integrity with exactly who I am as a
Mhm.
person. And that all these crazy experiences that people told me I was fucked up for, or that like I'm an outcast, or like I'm a failure, it's like, no, it's like the medicine for people. It's like I get to be with people in spaces where they feel like they're totally alone, and it's like, nah, brother, sister, like you're not. and there's so many of us that have been through this. Like, it's just not a lot of us make it out alive,
Yeah.
and you're okay, and you can recover, and you can have joy. And no matter what you've been through, or no matter what you've done in your life, no matter what mistakes you make, like, everybody deserves grace, because that's what nature does. It
Mm.
always provides grace, always. And so my life is that, like, God gave me grace and people helped me, and I was really difficult to help. I was not an easy person. So I love that, like, I work with people that, like, are going through crazy shit, and sometimes they don't even realize how crazy their shit is. I'm looking at it going like, "Ah, you're fucking in it." They're like, I got the high paying 6-figure job. I'm an executive of
Mhm.
some big tech company, and they're dealing with whatever shit. They're like just like the rest of us, like, fucking shit going on. So it's just super cool that I get to support people in that way. And so a lot of my work is really integrated across what we need to live healthy in life, which is mind, body, spirit. We need an understanding of how to manage our money. It doesn't matter if we have a lot of it. A lot of times we got crazy relationships with it. And sometimes we don't have any of it, and we still have a crazy relationship.
Yeah.
What do we need for diet? What's community look like? What's our artistic expression look like? What are our gifts? A lot of times when we're struggling in life, we don't even realize, like, what our gifts are. And we just do what we need to do to survive. So a lot of my work is also helping people come into conscious contact with themselves and nature, so that they can self-actualize who they really are in a way that
Mhm.
they sing with joy over being in their mind and their body and their spirit, and they get to express themselves in ways that are really beautiful and special to them, where they get to really live, like, really, really be alive.
That's so beautiful, and I feel it so deeply that the work you're doing is so sacred, and doing it with integrity, as you said, because you are helping people through the things that you lived yourself, which is a whole lot. And I do believe that the reason why you were never able to, like, take your life as you've tried so many times is because your purpose, it was so much bigger than yourself, and than your purpose
Well,
was,
well said. I used to,
yeah,
no, 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 please go ahead. There
to
was a slight delay.
now be able to support others, because you came out of it, you came and you saw the light, and now you are sharing and spreading that light with others, and that is so beautiful. And it's been such an honor to have you on the podcast and have this conversation with you. I loved it so much, and I'm sure we're gonna.
Thank you so much for the time and the curiosity and all the work that you've done in your life, that you can create these spaces for people to come and share and be such a wonderful steward of really healthy messages, because the world really needs that we can talk about all the beauty and all the messes and everything in between, and also find, grace and humility and inspiration and all of that. So thank you for all the work that you do, sister, because it shows in how you facilitate these spaces and how you speak on things, and also what you recognize in other people. So thanks for seeing the magic in me, and I'm grateful to see the magic in you as well.
Thank you. And thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in, for listening, for sharing your energy with us. And I will add in Kevin's links in the show notes. So make sure you go and check it out and see what he has to offer, because he is such a gift to this world. So go and check him out. Reach out to him on Instagram, on his website, and send us a message and let us know what was your biggest inspiration from this podcast. Stay safe, stay well. I love you, I appreciate you, and I believe in you. See you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to Spiritual Changemakers podcast. To stay connected and help us reach more people like you, please subscribe, follow, and leave a comment. Join our community of spiritual changemakers on social media to connect with like-minded individuals and continue the conversation. Remember, the power to create positive change is within you. Keep showing up as your best self, and let's keep the magic of change alive. Until next time.